The bar went dead silent as a group of leather-clad bikers burst into laughter, their eyes locking onto a quiet man sitting alone in the corner. "Ain't that Keanu Reeves?" one of them sneered, his voice laced with mockery. Another chuckled, shaking his head. "What's a big shot like him doing in a dump like this, huh? Guess he's not so tough without his Hollywood crew backing him up," another added, grinning. But before they could throw another insult, Keanu calmly reached for his phone, made a single call, and what happened next? No one in that bar would ever forget. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories. A group of rowdy bikers mocks Keanu Reeves at a roadside bar, assuming he's just another out-of-place celebrity. But with one call, Keanu flips the situation on its head, leaving them completely stunned. The story unfolds on a cold November night in 2016, just on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado. The Rusty Jack, a small, dimly lit biker bar, was packed with locals. The air hung thick with cigarette smoke and the sharp scent of whiskey. The men at the bar weren't used to seeing a world-famous actor among them, especially not one as unassuming as Keanu Reeves. Dressed in a worn-out leather jacket and faded jeans, he looked just like any other traveler passing through. He sat alone, near the jukebox, quietly sipping a beer, lost in thought. But the moment the bikers recognized him, the whole mood shifted. "Hey, Mr. Movie Star," one of them called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Where's your red carpet, huh?" The others roared with laughter, their taunts echoing off the walls. Keanu just smiled, calm, unfazed. "You don't look so tough without all those stunt doubles, do ya?" Another biker jeered. Keanu placed his beer down gently. His dark eyes met theirs, calm, steady, unreadable. Then, without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. One of the bikers scoffed. "Oh, what's he gonna do? Call his agent." They all laughed, but not for long. Within minutes, the bartender's face went pale. A low murmur spread through the room. Then came the sound, deep, rolling, unmistakable. The rumble of approaching engines, growing louder by the second. The bikers turned toward the door, their smirks slowly fading into confusion. And then, creak, the door swung open. A gust of icy November wind swept into the room as a group of men stepped inside. Silent, intimidating, dressed in all black. They weren't bikers, but their presence was something even the toughest men in that bar couldn't ignore. One of them, sharp blue eyes, a calm yet deadly demeanor, scanned the room before giving a small nod in Keanu's direction. Still seated, Keanu offered a knowing smile. "You good?" the man asked, his voice low, measured. Keanu leaned back, drumming his fingers against the beer bottle. "Yeah, just having a drink." His tone was casual, too casual. And yet, the air in the room grew heavier. The bikers shifted in their seats, unease creeping into their expressions. They didn't know who these men were, but every instinct screamed, this was not a crowd to mess with. Rick, the biggest of the bikers, built like a linebacker, a beard thick enough to hide a knife, cleared his throat, folding his arms. "Who the hell are you guys?" he demanded, trying to sound as tough as before. But there was an edge to his voice now, one he couldn't quite hide. The blue-eyed man didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled out a chair, sat down across from Keanu, and gestured toward the bartender. "Another round for my friend here."
His voice was calm.
Too calm. The bartender, who had been frozen in place, snapped into action, rushing to grab a fresh bottle. Keanu chuckled softly. "You didn't have to come all the way out here, man." The man shrugged. "Didn't like the sound of things over the phone. Thought I'd check in." Rick's frustration flared. He slammed a hand on the table. "I asked who the hell you guys are." Finally, the man met Rick's gaze. "You don't know?" His voice was quiet, yet it carried through the room like a blade slicing through silence. Rick blinked. "Should I?" The man smirked. "Probably." And then, VROOM. A new sound filled the air. A bone-shaking rumble. Not just a few motorcycles. Dozens. Maybe more. The walls trembled. The floor vibrated. The entire bar seemed to hold its breath. Rick and his crew turned toward the windows. Their faces reflected the red and white glow of headlights piercing through the cold night. The once half-empty parking lot? Now packed, wall to wall, with motorcycles. One of Rick's men muttered, "What the—" but his words trailed off as the engines cut off one by one, leaving behind a deafening silence. The door opened again. This time, an older man stepped inside, grizzled, commanding, eyes sharp as steel. He locked eyes with Keanu. Then he turned to Rick. "You got a problem with him?" Rick hesitated. His bravado flickered. He glanced around at his men, realizing, suddenly, just how outnumbered they were. Keanu finally stood, adjusting his jacket. His voice was quiet, but firm. "I came here for a quiet drink." He glanced at Rick, his expression unreadable. "Seems like we understand each other now." Rick swallowed hard. "Why yet, no problem." Keanu gave a small nod, tossing a few bills on the table for the bartender. Then he turned to the blue-eyed man. "Thanks for stopping by." The man smirked. "Anytime, brother." Keanu walked past Rick, his footsteps slow, deliberate. As he reached the door, he paused for a brief moment, then stepped outside into the cold night. One by one, the men followed. The motorcycles roared back to life, their engines shaking the ground like rolling thunder. Rick sank back into his seat, rubbing his face. "Jesus," he muttered. One of his men leaned in. "Who the hell was that guy?" Rick let out a slow breath, still staring at the door where Keanu had disappeared. "That was Keanu Reeves." He shook his head. "And we just messed with the wrong guy." The young man hesitated, then swallowed hard, looking down at the pavement before meeting Keanu's gaze again. "For just being you, I guess," he said, his voice laced with something deeper than admiration. "A few years ago, I was in a bad place. Lost someone I loved. Thought about giving up." He glanced at the patched jacket he wore, running his fingers over the worn fabric. "Then I saw this interview you did. You talked about loss, about how it never really goes away, but how we carry the people we love with us." Keanu felt his chest tighten. He had spoken those words once, not thinking much of them at the time, but now they had found their way back to him. The young man smiled, a little sheepish. "I started riding after that. Got on my first bike, hit the road, and I don't know it helped. Saved me, maybe. Just like you said." Keanu studied him for a long moment, then reached out and clapped a hand on the kid's shoulder. "I'm glad you found the road," he said simply. The young man grinned, nodding. "Me too." Red smirked from where he leaned against his bike, watching the exchange. "See, Hollywood," he said, shaking his head. "You're more than just a movie star to people." Keanu chuckled, but there was a quiet humility in his expression. He didn't need the recognition, the praise, or the fame. But moments like this? They meant something. As the kid walked back to his own bike, Keanu swung a leg over his, adjusting his gloves. The others followed suit, engines roaring back to life, the sound rolling across the desert like distant thunder. Maria pulled up beside him, her eyes shining with something unspoken. "Ready to ride?" she asked. Keanu took one last look at the horizon, the endless stretch of road ahead, and let out a slow breath. "Yeah," he said, a small but certain smile tugging at his lips. "Let's ride." And with that, they tore down the highway, the wind carrying them forward, not running, not escaping, but moving toward whatever came next.